So Apple just spaffed out its iPhone 16e, a supposedly more affordable version of the regular iPhones. If you saw my review of that one, you'll know exactly what I reckon. But if you didn't, to sum it up, I'd rather stick my in a blender. And now it's Google's turn to have a stab at a more affordable version of its flagship smartphone in the Pixel 9a, which will set you back £500 here in the UK, or $500 if you live in a land ruled by the dumbest, fattest Oompa Loompa. So a wee bit cheaper than the iPhone 16e, but is it actually any good? Well, I've had my SIM secreted inside of the Pixel 9a for over a week now, so here's my in-depth review. And for more of the latest and greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, as a smaller gentleman with hobbit-sized hands, I am still a wee bit perturbed that the Pixel 9a has slightly sprouted in size compared with the older 8a. So you've now got a 6.3-inch display slapped on the front end, and of course 6.3 inches is still pretty dinky for a smartphone in 2025, but sadly, thanks to the rather chunky bezels, the Pixel 9a doesn't feel particularly mini. And don't get me wrong, I'm not absolutely hating on those bezels. After a while, you kind of don't even really notice them anymore. At least they're pleasingly symmetrical, even if they are still thicker than the average Andrew Tate fan. But the big change for the Pixel 9a generation is that almost completely flat profile, which I've got to say is rather fantastic when you are jabbing at this thing on a desk, because there's absolutely bugger all jiggle action. Although of course the same could be said for the old style Pixel design with its horizontal camera bar which stretched the full width of the smartphone. And I am certainly warming up to Google's revamped design here, but I do miss that old finger shelf which was particularly handy when using the Pixel phones one-handed. Obviously you don't get that at all anymore. And besides the corners, there's pretty much no curves on the Pixel 9a at all. Those edges have been flattened right off, presumably in a bid to make it look more iPhone-y. And if that's what Google was going for, then mission successful, because it does feel like you're clutching one of those Apple-y slabs. As for that front end, it's once again Gorilla Glass 3, which is really getting on a bit. I'm surprised that Google hasn't upgraded that to Victus yet. But the good news is the Pixel 9a's screen is still completely blemish-free after a couple of weeks of being stuffed into bags and generally not treated with care. And that placky arse is still in perfect nick as well, despite the same rough treatment. And despite the matte finish, however, it does still get rather grubby at times, has to be said, so you will have to cleanse it every so often with a bit of enthusiastic polishing, proper bit of sleeve buffing or whatever. And yeah, I'm still pretty sure that this purpley colour, Iris as it is known, is still my favourite of the bunch. It's pleasingly poppy without going overboard, unlike the peony, the sort of pinky one, which is perhaps a bit much. So overall, pretty happy with the design, I've got to say. I think the Pixel 9a looks reasonably slick and premium enough despite the placky back. It's just a shame it couldn't have been a little bit more compact and also just a bit more hand-friendly as well. Stop making phones look like iPhones, because it's not good. Oh, and IP68 water resistant as well, so slightly more water resistant than the previous generation, can be submerged in even more water for even longer. Now, I found this past week and a bit that the Pixel 9a's in-display optical fingerprint sensor works rather well, even if your digits are rather damp. In fact, the only time it really failed me was when I did a bit of travelling this past week and my hands really dried out. It was then struggling a wee bit until I moisturised. Although you do also have a dependable bit of face unlock as backup, which works absolutely fine even in quite dodgy lighting, and it fully supports banking apps and other secure apps too. And as always, Google being super generous when it comes to the support for this thing as well. You've got no less than 7 years of OS updates and also all the usual pixel drops and security patching and everything too. So the Pixel 9a won't be out of support until I'm in my 50s, which is yeah, that's quite a depressing thought. So you've got identical support to those full-priced, fully fledged flagship smartphones, and you've basically got an identical software setup. Although actually not quite, because there are a couple of key missing features here on the Pixel 9a which you do get on the regular Pixel 9. Now, all the obvious stuff is present and correct, including, yes, a good bit of Gemini. Although if you purchase a Pixel 9a, you don't get a free year of Gemini Advanced, unlike with the more expensive premium flagships. So it's Gemini Basic all the way, unless you want to stump up for a Google One subscription. However, the biggest disappointment by far is the complete lack of support for screenshots. which is absolutely the best Google AI-based feature in my own humble, semi-soused opinion. And that's mostly because my memory is absolute cack, frankly, so screenshots was great for helping me to remember any events that I came across that I might fancy attending, movies that I might want to watch, games I might want to play, and just stupid admin-y tasks that people message me to remind me to do. But most of the rest of the Google Pixel repertoire is stuffed on the Pixel 9a, including a good bit of car crash detection and theft detection, neither of which, thankfully, I've actually had to use this past week. And yes, thankfully, Pixel 9a owners still get Google's own built-in VPN as well, although apparently this might not be available in some countries. Yeah, that stock Android experience is as fantastic and lovable as ever. And thankfully, this last week and a bit of living with the Pixel 9a, I've experienced pretty much zero bugs. It was helped, of course, by the fact that Android 15 has been around for quite some time now, so Google has squashed quite a lot of the bugs and sorted out the weird quirks that happened when that first dropped. Unfortunately, just like Apple, Google has been rather stingy when it comes to storage on this thing. 500 quid and it comes with just 128 gigs of the stuff as standard. You can't double that, upgrade to 256 gigs, but it's going to cost you 100 extra pound, at which point you're pretty much into full-on flagship territory. And it is overall pretty stingy, it has to be said, especially when a lot of rivals these days, even the likes of the Samsung Galaxy A56, come with 256 gigs of storage as standard. And oh yes, did you even have to ask, there's bugger all support for micro SD memory cards. Now, the Pixel 9a's 6.3-inch Actua display is a bit dinky, but it's still an absolute cracker for kicking back with movies, telly shows, etc. It's a POLED panel with 24-bit color support, as well as a bit of HDR action when you are streaming movies and the likes of Netflix and Disney+. It's a 2424 by 1080 pixel resolution, so visuals are nice and crispy, lots of fine detail when you are checking out your photos or enjoying a wee bit of Netflix drama. The brightness has been boosted up a wee bit versus the Pixel 8a, and generally visibility is fine on sunnier days. You can just about see what's going on, even if you're wearing shades, although I did start to struggle if the sun was beaming directly off that glossy panel. I have to say though, the adaptive brightness can be a wee bit shonky here on the Pixel 9a. Occasionally I've had to manually boost the brightness up when I've been outdoors or in a brighter environment. And that screen also doesn't get quite as dim as I would prefer for a bit of late night or early morning viewing, and there's a sod-all anti-flicker tech in there as well if you are sensitive to OLED panels in lower light conditions. The refresh rate maxes out at 120Hz, but it's not LTPO tech here on the Pixel 9a, so it does bottom out at 60Hz. And although the in-display fingerprint sensor works remarkably well even when your hands are quite moist, unfortunately the screen itself is frustratingly unresponsive if it gets just a little bit damp. So if you're outside and it's raining, you're best off just sticking it away in a bag or a pocket so the screen doesn't go absolutely mental on you. I have found that the Pixel 9a's stereo speaker setup is absolutely fine. It's proper loud when you max out the volume, easy to hear even when you're cooking or walking down a busy street or whatever, and that sound is rather well balanced. And I've had absolutely zero issues when it comes to the Bluetooth wireless streaming as well. I've tried various earbuds and headphones and speakers, but absolutely fine, even in incredibly busy environments like Manhattan. Now the Pixel 9a is powered by the very same Tensor G4 chipset that was crammed inside of all of those Pixel 9 flagships, although in this cheaper handset it is backed by a mere 8 gigs of RAM. And while your everyday Android shenanigans is as smooth as buttery lard, unfortunately hardcore gamers should certainly look to upgrade, because more intensive titles like Wuthering Waves really do struggle on the Pixel 9a. Even though that wee blighter ran just fine on some of Google's more expensive blowers powered by the same Tensor chipset. These past couple of weeks I've had a few games on Wuthering Waves, and every single time you see that frame rate drop to around the sort of 30 to 40 frames per second level whenever things kick off a bit, and even during relatively relaxed stretches of play, never seem to really hit those upper 50s. Thankfully, well-optimized games like Call of Duty play beautifully, so if that's more your bag, well, you'll be happy enough with the Pixel 9a. Although that gaming mode is sadly as bare bones as ever. Certainly in the likes of Wuthering Waves, you've got none of the optimization, achievements, leaderboards, etc. You can literally stream to YouTube live. Got a bit of do not disturb, you can pull up a frame counter, and that's pretty much it. Here's hoping that Google upgrades and improves that at some point soon, because it's looking a bit piddly compared with a lot of rivals. But the good news is the Pixel 9a rarely overheats. It's generally fine during game, and it gets a little bit toasty up sort of near the top, but it never actually gets to the point where it starts throttling the performance or is in risk of shutting down from overheating. I also got a wee bit sizzly when I turned on the hotspot button and hooked up my laptop, but again didn't overheat. The only one single time I've seen this thing overheat is literally when I left it out in the sun on the hottest day of the year so far. It was like 25-26 degrees. And to be fair, I left out another flagship phone in exactly the same state, and that also overheated and shut down. When the Pixel 9a first launched, there was a fair bit of online discussion and debate, shall we say, about the modem that Google's chucked in here, because they've gone with the older 5300 modem rather than the fresh new 5400 that Google crammed inside of the Pixel 9 and the rest of the family. So you got the usual sub-6 5G shenanigans. It's Wi-Fi 6E rather than Wi-Fi 7. But the mobile connectivity's been absolutely fine for me using the physical SIM, and I also basically had this thing running off an eSIM for about 4 or 5 days when I went over to New York for the Motorola launch. Absolutely bugger all issues there. I was streaming video, I was gaming online, etc. Perfect connection the entire time. The only issue I've had with connectivity on this thing is one evening, for some reason, it kept dropping off of my home Wi-Fi. I've got no idea why. It would be connected for 30 seconds, then just poof, it would just decide it can't be arsed anymore. I have to keep manually reconnecting it. But as I say, that only happened the one evening, and then it's been absolutely fine ever since. And the battery life has been massively boosted for this generation to a 5100 mAh capacity cell, which is bigger than what you'll get on a lot of flagships and a lot of other rival mid-ranges, and it's a big jump over the old Pixel 8a, which I believe had a 4500 mAh capacity cell. So if you are quite a demanding user, good news, Pixel 9a will suit you down to the ground. Certainly most regular days here in the UK, I ended the day with around 25 to 30% battery life remaining. That's with loads of screen on time, plenty of mixed use, good bit of audio streaming in the background, plenty of camera play, etc. Even video chatting didn't drain it too quickly. It's only gaming on the likes of Wuthering waves that will see that battery life drop rather rapidly. Although that said, when I buggered off to the States, I switched on an eSIM in this thing. I had it connected to a mobile network basically the entire time, didn't connect to any Wi-Fi at all ever. It did seem to drain the Pixel 9a's battery all the quicker, to the point where at the end of those pretty admittedly long days, I was in power saver mode every single time. Although naturally, being in New York, I was absolutely rinsing that camera. I'd taken a lot of photos and video, so that wouldn't have helped matters. Sadly, it is slow as balls 23 watt wired charging support, so if you are in a bit of a hurry to get out the door, you suddenly realise, oh no, I'm almost out of charge. You can't just bung a cable in this thing for 5 minutes and expect it to make much of a difference at all. And while you do have wireless charging support, which is always nice, unfortunately it's not Qi 2, it's the old Qi 1, and it tops off at about 7.5 watts, so even more slow as balls, the slowest balls there is. Oh, and there's bugger all battery share if you happen to have some true wireless earbuds or a smartwatch that charges wirelessly. So let's finish this lovely wee Google Pixel 9a review with a squint at the dual lens camera setup. And that primary shooter is a 48 megapixel quad PD sensor with optical image stabilization, and it's backed by a simple 13 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter. And it is a simplified setup here on the Pixel 9a. There's no high resolution mode or general pro controls. Got some basic stuff like night sight, which of course can automatically activate when the lighting is crap. And you can also tinker with the brightness, the shadows, and the white balance. But while there's sod all high res mode option, you can still capture a crispy 12 meg pic in auto mode on the Pixel 9a, and it'll look proper good when you chuck it up onto a bigger screen. Colours look refreshingly natural, and the Pixel 9a is still preferable to those iPhone-y, Samsung-y rivals when it comes to contrast. You'll mostly enjoy quite natural looking results instead of those artificially brightened pics, although the 9a can occasionally slightly saturate the scene, especially in sunlit conditions. I also saw some flaring when the sun was shining, although only a wee bit, not too bad. Indoor shots look fantastic, not too warm, and still plenty of detail packed into every frame, while the Pixel 9a is another stunner for night photography. And there is bugger all telephoto shooter action here on the Pixel 9a, unlike some cheaper rivals, the likes of the Nothing Phone 3a and 3a Pro for instance. And Google's 8x super res zoom capabilities are no real substitute, but you can at least pinch into the sort of 3 to 4 times level and still get a good looking portrait snap without having to get right up in your subject's face. And likewise, despite supporting macro photography on that primary sensor, the Pixel 9a isn't quite as capable as those flagships. You can't get too close to your subject without blurry results, so you'll have to use the digital zoom instead. And of course, you've got the usual selection of bonus features, including Add Me, the good bit of AI action. You can insert yourself into a shot with your mates. Got panorama mode, etc, etc. And if you want to record a bit of video action, where you can record up to 4K resolution footage at 30 or 60 frames per second. There's no support for 10-bit HDR video on the Pixel 9a or the 24 frames per second frame rate or macro video either, unlike the Pixel 9 flagships. And likewise, there's no video boost, which helps to brighten up footage shot in low light. But still, the Pixel 9a records some perfectly great looking home movies. At 4K resolution, you get some crispy detail, the stabilization's decent, the audio pickup, thanks to the dual mic setup, is nice and crisp and clear. And you've got a decent wee selection of editing tools pre-stuffed on here, including the excellent Audio Eraser, which just analyzes the sound in any videos that you've shot, and then allows you to reduce any background noise, etc. So it's only the sound that you actually want to be heard that comes through loud and clear. And likewise, you've got the usual fantastic set of editing tools on here. So all you need to do is tap this wee AI button down here. And you can quickly and easily remove any background stragglers in your photos. And there's a few other AI editing tools as well. So for instance, you can recreate a golden hour type scene no matter what time of the day you shoot a photo. Got a good bit of auto framing, best take, etc. So all the absolute bangers from the Pixel 9 series have thankfully trickled down to the Pixel 9a. And again, pretty much zero was from that front-facing 13 megapixel selfie camera. You can record yourself at up to 4K resolution, failing to say selfie camera properly. The image stabilization's absolutely fine, considering I'm shooting at Ultra HD resolution. The audio pickup nice and clear thanks to the dual mic setup. So overall, pretty tasty. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a tasty wee nutshell is the fresh new Pixel 9a, my in-depth review after using it for almost 2 weeks as my full-time smartphone. And I gotta say, I do like it. It is a more than competent mid-range mobile that will suit most people absolutely fine. Unfortunately for Google, however, it does have some pretty hardcore rivals now in 2025, including, for instance, the Nothing Phone 3a Pro, which boasts a similar sort of stock version of Android, but added bonuses like the Glyph Lighter, and you've got the Essentials Space, which is actually a slightly better version of Google's Screenshots app, which you, of course, don't get here on the Pixel 9a. And you've even got a ruddy telephoto camera shooter on it as well. All the same though, I'd say unless you're a hardcore gamer or something, you should be more than satisfied having the Pixel 9a stuffed in your pants for the long haul. So that's what I reckon anyway. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on Google's Pixel 9a down in the comments below. If you've been using it as your full-time blower, let us know what you think thus far. And please do subscribe, ding that notifications bell if you haven't done so already, and have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!